maybe Jeff, you can kick off. Can you sort of tell us a bit about your app portfolio and how it's been doing, so far this year?
Sure. So we have 5 different apps. They're all dating, meet new people apps. Meet Me is one of our biggest, serving a kind of a U.S. audience. Tagged African American, Lavu European, Growler gay dating, Scout kind of more international. And what we do that's fairly unique is we marry dating with live streaming video. We've been doing live streaming video, building live streaming video since 2016. It turns out that in this time of pandemic, people have kind of flocked to those live streaming video solutions as they can't, socialize as much. And so we've built out some kind of interesting dating games, allowing everybody to essentially be the star of their own dating show.
Great. And how have you been seeing trading then this year? Obviously, you're a public company. What's been happening to revenues? What's been happening to usage? How tough has it been?
It actually hasn't been particularly tough. The usage has increased around video in particular. Time spent in video went up 47%. So essentially what people are doing is they're replacing connections that they used to have in real world with live streaming. And we think of it as, and someone has said this, I don't recall who, but it's kind of bringing the future forward, where the amount of kind of the adoption of live streaming that might have taken place in 3 years took place in 3 months. And so as far as the company, we're in the process of selling the company, which we announced in March for $500 million to the company behind eHarmony, and that remains on track.
Right. And so I guess even for yourself, dating has been disrupted quite a bit. People can't go out and meet, but you're managing to pivot and offering kind of live streaming as a way of connecting people, and that's working well over the app platform.
Yeah, that's right. So we also have begun. Our model was basically to create live streaming video for one of our core apps, Meet Me, and then we started acquiring other apps to add it to, and that's why we acquired those other 4 apps. Lately, what we've started doing is also powering other apps' live video solutions, and we are working now on a particularly large one, as well as working on bringing on a couple others as well. So any app that doesn't have live streaming video and has a million plus DAU, that's kind of our sweet spot for activating live streaming video. And what we offer is essentially all of the talent management, the safety moderation. We have 500 people, 500 paid moderators, dozens of talent people, and every few months we're churning out new and kind of interesting video features that really are all aimed at kind of dating, meeting people over live streaming video. And right now it's mostly a one-to-many format, few to many. We're going to be varying that format, allowing more streamers. We're also looking deeply in the one-on-one video capabilities.
Got it. Yeah, I've got a friend who's currently dating using he's rigged up Zoom, and he's doing his first date on Zoom, and his second date now is a socially distanced bike ride. So, but he's not managed to complete the funnel particularly well, I think, the loop. So great. So you've seen usage has been good. People still want to meet, and you've managed to adapt your platform to video to sort of keep that going. And what about revenues? We had a post from the legendary Eric Siffert of Mobile Dev Memo quite early on in the pandemic, and he was kind of having a RIP, good times for mobile, and the app industry is not immune, and kind of negative outlook. What have you seen? You more than anyone, it's a massive business you're running, and what sort of trends have you seen in terms of revenues?
Right. I mean, as a public company, I can't exactly comment on the trends right now, but I would say
or
you know, we're
historically, yeah.
we're pretty far from RIP good times. I mean, this is kind of a golden era for live streaming video. The pandemic has really made people who probably would never get comfortable streaming suddenly comfortable with streaming, just because there's no other thing to do. And those people post-pandemic aren't going to stop streaming. You know, they're going to continue streaming because, you know, they've started it and now they understand it, and they understand the value of it. And so that's kind of that point of kind of pulling the future forward. You know, the crisis kind of made people start to adapt to new technologies. And one of the biggest problems with live streaming has always been, and this is now my third video product, the first two failed for the same reason, which was getting enough adoption into live streaming video. It's something difficult to put yourself out there and stream in front of other people. And especially in a dating context. But people are getting increasingly comfortable with that. And so, you know, I would say we're pretty much the polar opposite of RIP good times.
Great. And I saw from your recent filing or Q1, I think, that subscription revenues was growing. Ads were slightly down, but you know, definitely strong kind of consumer payments. Is that something
Yeah,
you
I mean,
can
the
comment
dating
on?
business hasn't been
Yeah.
particularly impacted. So the core dating business has not been much impacted. You know, traffic is what you'd expect it to be. You know, I think that ads, and we've said this in the past, ads have been particularly impacted. You know, whole categories of advertiser kind of pulled out of the market, like brand advertising, all at once, you know, in mid-March. And you know, they may be starting to return, but that's going to be a long process. But meanwhile, you know, video is kind of advertising a relatively small portion of our revenue. So, you know, video is kind of the story, and that it seems like the pandemic has led more people to be comfortable with live streaming, and we're continuing to see that. You know, our share of VDAU is good. You know, and users continue to engage in the platform. You know, more or less as they had pre-pandemic, but you know, they spend now, you know, 40-50% more time. So like the total usage is roughly where it was in terms of users, maybe up a little bit, but now the ones that are there are just spending a lot more time.
So we're seeing in your bit of the app business, people, yeah, they're still very much engaged, and it's accelerating some of the things that maybe would have taken longer. This new different consumer behaviors coming through, and that's kind of feeding into the business. Great. Okay. Well, that's a really exciting story, and we'll now move over to Darius. So, Darius, you're not yet a publicly traded company. Maybe one day, but maybe you can sort of say a bit about, you know, your story and where you've got to so far.
Yeah. So Reflectly is the world's what we call the most popular journaling app. We launched about 3 years ago. It basically let people vent their thoughts and feelings, make positivity louder, and sort of make people feel okay about what they're feeling, help them track throughout the time. So we launched, a little over 3 years ago. We've hit about 10 million users at this point. So we're in the mental fitness or sort of mental wealth space. Like you said, during the just after or very recently, TechCrunch wrote an article where they featured us, and they said we're the third most popular mental fitness app in the US, right after Calm and Headspace. So we've been seeing a lot of traffic, especially now as well. I think that's sort of the companies we're not necessarily competing with, but we're in the same space with. And I think interesting thing to point out there is that Calm has raised north of $140 million. Headspace raised more than $200 million. We're still less than 10 people, and we just raised a small round, our first round of money. So we're 10 times smaller in terms of our size and resources and people, but we're still competing on the same level. And we started recently doing some acquisitions as well. So we acquired a couple of apps in our space, and that's how we're going to move forward as well.
Great. And what happened this year? Obviously, you, along with everyone, you had this great, amazing, growing app business, and things were going really well. You all was great, and then this pandemic hit us. So, what have you seen since then?
So Reflectly helps people deal with anxiety and in general stress in daily lives. And anxiety and stress has gone up during the pandemic, and people were really struggling to stay in lockdown, not only because complete change of lifestyle, but also all the negative news that are affecting us. So we've actually been in a really good position where we were able to help a lot of people sort through their emotions and feelings, and we could help a lot of people. And a lot of people that wouldn't normally consider journaling started doing it because they heard it's a good thing. And Reflectly basically created the journaling category the way it is on the App Store right now. So we are actually in a pretty good position.
Got it. And how have you seen, again, consumer behavior? People, has it been, where have you seen the growth?
Yeah, so we're mainly focused on the US. That's our biggest market. We do have a lot of Australia, Canada, UK, all the English-speaking countries. We haven't seen any drastic changes. We've seen, obviously, there's big shifts to the advertising, like Jeff was talking about before, that the CPMs and the prices dropped as soon as Giblet has pulled out. But then what I've noticed also, a lot of small companies, anybody that ever wanted to create a side hustle project at home started doing it. They all started to advertise on Facebook. So we had all these small companies coming in as well. Didn't quite match the budget, so the CPMs were not the same. But yeah, we saw the shift over there. And then we saw minor shifts in usage, but I wouldn't say anything drastic.
Right. And in terms of payments and the business model, were all these new people coming in, did they have this similar propensity to pay, or did it go down?
Yeah, so we were expecting that the premium subscriptions would actually go down because along with the virus, there's obviously economic damage as well. A lot of people lost their jobs. In the US specifically, it was very, very bad. It still is. But we didn't see any drastic shift in there. So we also, the intent of users was pretty high, and we didn't see any problems in terms of getting subscriptions in and sort of continuing the way we started off in 2020, actually.
Great. And so how are you feeling now about the outlook for the next 6 months?
I think, well, for us, it's exciting because we just raised our first round of money. But we didn't need to raise the money for growth. We raised the money for acquisitions. We already started doing some of them. So for us, we're super excited going forward because our business has gone much, much bigger, especially in the last year. So we'll also be growing in terms of the talent and everything else. So for us, it's actually looking pretty good. We'll see how it goes. Great.
Okay, well, now we've had a bit of an intro. I've got a couple of sort of general questions for you both. And one is, we've had this incredibly tough time. You guys both had good businesses going into this, good app businesses. This is hit, and you've both managed to grow through it and do well. What sort of things have helped you do that in terms of maybe team or internally or capabilities? What sort of things do you think an app business needs now to be able to adapt, grow, pivot, and succeed?
Yeah, you want me to? I'll jump in. We're our team. We're probably we're well over a few hundred people, and but we're kind of been fortunate in that we have a number of distributed teams, and we always have. So we have we had a couple teams in San Francisco, even though the main bulk of the office is in the Princeton, New Jersey, New Hope area, New Hope, Pennsylvania area. We have 100 people in Dresden and some in Berlin. And so a lot of our meetings had always had people on the screen. And what's interesting in now this time of pandemic is now of course everybody's working from home. But we already had all the structures and technology already in place, Zoom and so forth. That has actually gotten, I think, even easier to communicate, in the sense that you don't have some people in the conference room and some people, on the computer. And that, I think, allows, whenever you have that hybrid communication, the people not in the room are generally the ones at a disadvantage, because they're just not able to follow everything that's going on. And to some extent, this has kind of been an improvement over kind of how things have been. And the pace of development, I would say the main things we changed about our development was to shorten how far into the future we're looking. Because we don't know how long necessarily the pandemic will last. I think it'll last a long time, but we're more focused on 2 or 3 months out, and shortening that time cycle is, instead of being 6 to 12 months out, has given us kind of more focus, I think, on the engineering and product side. And we've gotten more built, I think, in the last 3 or 4 months than I recall getting built in any 3 or 4 month period. And some things were just straight out of the pandemic, right? Like one of our apps didn't have video, so 4 out of 5 did. The one that didn't was actually the most impacted. We quickly rolled out video there ahead of schedule, ahead of what we had previously scheduled prior to the pandemic. So, I would say, we've gotten very comfortable in the work from home environment, but we started off at a good spot where people were already used to having people on the screen and used to being in a distributed team. The only difference now is everyone's distributed, which I think is actually more efficient.
Got it. So it's all about keep working in a remote fashion, which most tech, including app companies, seem to have dealt with very well, and keeping the pace of tech development going, and keep going with product innovation. And Darius, from your point of view, what have you seen?
Yes, I mean, we're a super tiny team. Like I said, we're less than 10 people full-time working on this. So in that sense, we haven't really felt any differences. We've been working remote, a lot of us anyway, so that's been as normal. I mean, big challenge has been hiring. You can do all the Zoom calls you want, but you just can't get the vibe from a person unless you meet them in person. So we had to pause hiring for some time. But I think one thing that allowed us to sort of coast through it and be very comfortable as a business is just we had solid fundamentals. We didn't have to worry about the cash, and even if we stopped advertising, at the beginning, we would have been totally fine. So if anything, we've also been very productive because we were able to sit back and have the comfort knowing that we have a good business, everything is flowing, fundamentals are working, and we don't have to worry about survival month to month, or if it lasts for another 6 months even, or a year, whatever that might be, we're just not worried about that. So I think that has allowed us to also be more productive, and we've seen that we're able to take advantage of the situation rather than being dragged down by it.
Got it. Okay, well, one question I did have was, in terms of different verticals out there, aside from maybe the ones you're in, is there anything you think is exciting, in the future for apps? Whether that be, other types of apps you think there's a lot of growth to come in?
Your mic is muted.
I think you're trying to say something. Yourself, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully you can hear me. So,
yeah.
Yeah. In terms of what else is out there that we're looking at, I mean, I think, Zoom is obviously the hit of the kind of this whole era, right? It's a live streaming. We mostly think in the dating aspects of live streaming and how do we make these dating games, these fun little mini games. But Zoom is kind of now this monstrously big company that is on league with Facebooks of the world, and I think it'll be interesting to see how Zoom navigates that. Do they add they make a platform, an open API available? Will you see dating businesses built upon it? Will they build a dating business of their own? I think Zoom has the potential to be so many different things, given the number of people that interact there every day. And I think that we'll probably be dealing with kind of the ramifications of that in a number of different industries for some time. I generally and just very pro on kind of live streaming and audio. I would say, you know, live audio, to some extent recorded audio with podcasts, but you know, those are areas that I think are just going to get hotter and hotter as time goes on.
Darius, any areas you're excited about?
Well, one thing that at least at Reflectly, we started to spend a lot of time, I mean, a few months ago at the end of last year, was TikTok. And we sort of started to see the shift of consumers like going from, like, TikTok is the only platform that's replacing Instagram right now, the same way Instagram replaced Facebook. And I think we saw that quite early on last year and jumped on, and we were able to build competence and shifted that platform pretty early. And then during the pandemic, TikTok just skyrocketed, went crazy. We were able to ride that wave. So I think TikTok is only going to get more important and more interesting for companies. They have some especially for apps, they have some very interesting products in the line, whether they're doing like, you can do influencer directly through TikTok and all these paid advertisements, or if you have a TikTok profile on app profile on TikTok, as an app, you can have a download app button directly inside TikTok, so users can download your app without ever leaving. All these things they're doing very well, and they're very smart about it, and they're removing a lot of friction. So that's we're spending a lot of time looking at that, and I think it's only going to get more interesting in the future.
Great. Okay. Well, I was hoping to take a couple of questions, but I've not really left enough time scheduling wise to incorporate that, but I've had a really good chat so far. I've got a sort of closing, maybe we can continue the conversation in some sort of future forum, hopefully. It's great, really great talking to you, and yeah, I only wish I'd scheduled another half hour to keep going, but great to hear from two different apps. Both at app businesses, both at very different stages, both dealing with headwinds but managing to succeed. My closing question to you both: the app business barometer. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, Jeff. Hopefully, you will. On a scale of 1 to 10, and to 1 being lowest, 10 being the highest, how positive are you about growth prospects in the app market right now?
I would say, you know, I'm an optimist by nature. I would have to say like an 8, probably. I mean, it's a great time. It's a great time right now.
Right. Darius?
Yeah, I'm the same. People are spending more time on their phones. It's just the opportunity is only getting bigger and bigger. It's definitely up there, 8, 9.
8 or 9. Okay, so we have an average, I think, of 8.5. Let's say from the two panelists, and if we end the poll and see what everyone else is saying, I'm not sure I'll be able to work out an average on the fly here, but you know, generally looks pretty positive. I guess it depends which sort of vertical you're in. If you're in a travel vertical right now, you might think very differently, but you know, definitely some positive sentiment. Well, just wanted to say thanks to you both, and yeah, good luck with the rest of the year, and you know, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks guys. Okay, next up, everyone, we will be talking how to market your app using content marketing. So see you shortly.